Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of India and the World. And today we have with us again a very special guest, NC Bipindra ji. Bipindra ji, most welcome here and thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule. And Bipindra ji is a founder and currently also heads Law and Society Alliance, a think tank. It's a Delhi-based think tank which works on strategic affairs. He is a veteran journalist who has covered defense and strategic affairs in leading Indian and international publication, and he's also a regular contributor to a large number of national and international publications. And today we are having this discussion because Bipindra ji wrote a very interesting article in First Post recently, and it was about China's grey zone warfare and how it has created disturbances in China Sea. So we are going to discuss that. And Bipindra ji, once again, welcome. Uh,
Thank you, Arun.
I just wanted to ask you what exactly, because it's a very interesting term which we have used for, so for normal reader, for normal viewers who are not much aware about the strategic affairs. So, what is this China's gray zone warfare, and how are they carrying it in South China Sea?
Right. Uh, in fact, the gray zone warfare, this particular term is not a new term. It's been in news for quite a while now, at least 2, 3 decades now. This has been in news. And in particular, gray zone warfare is something which is usually, black and white, gray. I think we understand these three color combinations. So when you say black and white, there is a full-fledged conventional war, which is basically military warfare, where you send your ground troops to occupy territory or to attack an enemy with your weapons. That is conventional warfare. When you say gray zone warfare, this is neither conventional nor unconventional warfare. This is essentially somewhere between the two. Uh, what we actually mean is that actually this term has been borrowed from the idea of the Chinese military thinker Sun Tzu. In his Art of War, he mentions about something called as fighting, that is winning a war without fighting it. Essentially, you win a war against your enemy without fighting it by demoralizing them and curtailing or defeating their will to fight a war against you. So this is the essentially the strategy. Here, the strategy is essentially that you don't use your conventional military power and strength, but you use unconventional means which are like say cyber warfare, where you really don't have to send ground troops to attack the enemy, or say psychological warfare, about which I have written a lot, which is about influencing the minds of your enemy countries' population. And the third type of warfare is called as lawfare or legal warfare, which is essentially you fight the battle through legal means without having to send your troops and your weapons to fight the enemy. This particular gray zone is basically, it is in with regard to China, it's called as unrestricted gray zone warfare, because when I say unrestricted, it means that the Communist Party of China is willing to exploit any and all domains that are available, including economic sphere, information sphere, which is again the psychological warfare sphere, legal warfare sphere, energy related warfare, military, or any other warfare that is available to them, uh, both conventional and non-conventional warfare, to gain advantage against its neighborhood. And when we say gray zone, it implies that Beijing may not prefer to have a very direct military confrontation with its enemy. Instead, it will keep its actions below the legal threshold of a military action, which can be called as a act of war, and continue to pose a threat to peace-loving nations across the world, including South China Sea, which is what the article that you are referring to has talked about. And warfare is essentially optimally suited to explain what you call it as the Beijing's desire to have outcomes that are in its favor through these actions, through these gray zone warfare actions. And all their activities are gone across all domains, whether to gain psychological control over the enemy mindset and mind space, or to pressurize them through legal means, or economic means or information means. All sorts of activity will be used for this warfare method, which is a unconventional warfare method. So this is what I mean when I say unrestricted gray zone warfare that is being adopted. This is a gray zone warfare is a philosophy, war doctrine that the Chinese PLA adopted about 20 years back, and they've been following it through for quite a while now, for the last at least 2 decades now. It's not a new term.
Then how countries in this region, like which have a stake in the maritime security in South China Sea, so how they have responded to it so far, to the to China's gray zone warfare?
Right. So, okay, let us examine this question with a few examples. Like, for example, the latest example, today's example. Today is what, June 22nd. Today morning, Taiwan has released a their defense ministry has released a statement saying in the last 24 hours, since June 21st morning to June 22nd morning, the Chinese have sent in 41 of its military warplanes, into the air zone territory of Taiwan. Essentially, you are putting major pressure, psychological pressure on the people of Taiwan by sending your military airplanes. You don't know how the airplanes will react. It's unpredictable. If they come and bomb you, you're a small island. If they bomb across Taiwan, then your lead time to react to that particular aggression by Chinese PLA Air Force is very little. So your air defense gets activated. So all sorts of it involves expenditure for Taiwan, both your psychological spending of psychological and mental faculties, and your military spending your military faculties, your force that you have. So this is one sort of pressure that they adopt. Look at just what happened just a week before. Philippines, has a territory called the South Thomas Shoal, which is a small territory highland sort of a facility, which is uninhabited at this point in time. But Philippines, what they have is a small uh, warship that has been, they have rammed that warship into that island territory, and they have a few personnel manning that particular boat, which is currently run aground on that island. So 1 week before, there was a Philippines naval vessel which went to replenish the requirements of the personnel who are living there, like food, water, all these essential necessities. So what the Chinese did, they sent both their Coast Guard ships and the naval militia. See, the Chinese have something which is very interesting, which doesn't have a legal standing, called as a maritime militia. The maritime militia is basically a force which has no legal standing as an armed force, but still they do warfare against your enemy, which is happening in South China Sea. So the militia and the Coast Guard went and rammed into the boats that were going to replenish the run aground ship, on which there are a few Philippine armed forces personnel guarding the territory. So they used unconventional, not contemporary weapons, some very old weapons like a knife or a axe or something like that, to attack and target the Philippine naval personnel who are going there. So they try to, the Philippine defense minister also issued a statement against it, saying that this was almost like a piracy attack. So I was watching some interesting television program which called it as the Galwan attack of the South China Sea. Even Galwan in Ladakh in 2020, if you remember, June 15th, there was this attack that happened on the Indian military personnel using some very archaic weapons like sharp-edged lathis and stuff like that, by which they try to injure the Indian soldiers. So they called this particular attack on the South Thomas Shoal on the Philippine Navy as the Galwan of incident of the South China Sea. So these are some of the examples. How do they respond to this? How do these nations in South China Sea respond to it? essentially what they do is they essentially try to militarily oppose these things and also try to bring a international pressure on the PLA and the Chinese by involving other nations, other democracies in the world. Like for example, US and Philippines have a very strong defense relationship between them, and they have recently signed an agreement also where the US has said any attack on Philippines will be considered as an warfare on the US itself, and that the US will intervene militarily. Even in Taiwan, for that matter, US has completely pledged its support in the defense of Taiwan, and even the Philippine military agreement is essentially targeted or oriented towards Taiwan because it is easier for the US military to stage a defense of Taiwan from Philippine territory. So these are some of the military effort that they are doing. The other effort that they are doing is there is a recent equivalent of a quad, four countries: India, Australia, Japan, and US. Similarly, they have added countries in South China Sea who are now part of that particular force called a squad, where diplomatically they put pressure on China from acting like this. And also one other interesting thing is in 2016 there was a international tribunal award that went against China with regard to its 9-line claim in South China Sea. This is actually countering the legal warfare by South China Sea nations. So the International Tribunal has said that the 9-line is illegal. There is no historical or geographical claim that China can make on South China Sea. All the artificial islands that they were creating by reclaiming land are all illegal. That does not give China any right of territorial rights over South China Sea. These are some of the verdicts that have come from the International Tribunal. That is one way of countering it. The legal warfare can be countered like this. So this is some of the means by which the nations in South China Sea are countering this gray zone warfare by China. And one interesting thing about Philippines is that they have understood the threat of gray zone, and they have been. I've had a good opportunity to interact with the Philippine ambassador recently in one of the events in a think tank in Delhi, where he mentioned about how Philippine government took up a massive educational campaign within Philippines among its youth population, particularly among students, on how the gray zone warfare works, so that they're aware of the gray zone warfare and they are able to counter the psychological warfare that China has been doing. So these are some of the methods by which the nations counter the gray zone warfare by the Chinese.
What actually are the long-term and short-term objectives of this gray zone warfare being carried out by China in South China Sea? So, what are the objectives it want to attain?
See, the objectives, the long-term objectives that China wants to attain by this is to assert its territorial claims in South China Sea. You find a similar claim that they have made on Arunachal Pradesh in the for a long time now, on Ladakh region, which they've already occupied and called it as Aksai Chin. So essentially, what they are trying to do is they are trying to do this territorial claim over this territory, and essentially what it gives them is the long-term right to economically exploit the sea zone, the sea area for its own economic benefit. So they can do undersea, mining activities for rare earth minerals out there. They can also exploit the maritime, wealth that is available in those region. So it also gives them what do you call it as protection against any maritime threats that come their way, because their territorial uh, waters is so large that it becomes difficult for, say, a naval power like the US Navy to wade in and do a targeting of. You are actually creating a area denial by making these territorial claims, because other warships cannot come into those territory without prior permission of the Chinese. So I mean, if the territorial claim is established of that particular territorial waters, if it is established, then no nation can enter without prior permission. No navies can enter. So your claim is curtailed by this territorial claim in the South China Sea, and the gray zone warfare is essentially to assert their territorial claim and also to exploit the wealth, the maritime wealth that exists in that region. So these are the two or three major focus area for this gray zone warfare in that region. One is territorial integrity and territorial claims. Second is maritime wealth, and the third is area denial, essentially military defense for its own territory. These are the three for its mainland,
You
essentially.
also mentioned in your article, if I may just add before going on to the next question. So, Bipendraji had mentioned in his article that because Xi Jinping, is trying to divert the attention away from the economic crisis which China is facing. So, he is trying to, create a big friction. So that would,
Yeah.
take,
Yeah, that is a
yeah.
absolutely, Arun Anandji. That is actually a larger, issue which is internal to communist China. Essentially, the recent, if you look at the strategic support force reorganization that happened, they broke up that strategic support force which was created about 9 years ago and created three different arms of, one doing cyber warfare, one doing aerospace warfare, and the third doing information warfare. These, this rearrangement that happened sometime in May was essentially because Z was perceiving a threat from the generals of the particular strategic support force, because they had a lot of information that were both detrimental to Z and also detrimental to the the Communist Party, his hegemony over the Communist Party leadership. So this gray zone warfare is also another tactics of diverting attention of the local politics to his own, commissions and omissions that he's doing as the president of China, or the leader of the Communist Party of China. So this is essentially there is an internal politics angle also to what is happening in with, say, against Taiwan or Philippines or the other nations in the South China Sea. There is one that element also to it. Yeah.
My last question to you, Bipindraji, is now what are the implications for India as far as these developments are concerned, and how we have responded to it so far?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, because today I cannot say that my focus area or immediate area of attention is only the Indian Ocean region, because India is growing as a global power, and it's gaining status as a regional power in the region. The only country which has border through which it can put foot on the ground within China. No other power in the world which can stand up to communist China, say for example US, as the benefit of being able to put your boots on the ground in China. So India is the only nation that has that capability. So because of which your importance in the region is increasing day by day. I mean, there is some sort of a rift with regard to the borders with Russia also. But will Russia put its soldiers on the ground against China? At this moment, it doesn't seem to be a possibility. Uh, so that is one. Number two, India's area of interest, both economic and strategic interest, is widening to the entire Pacific region also now. That the reason for that is India has invested heavily in oil exploration in offshore assets in Vietnam, and in other areas also we are doing it. So our economic interest in the region is increasing. So South China Sea is a very very important region for us because of these kind of things. And one more thing is that that is one area where India's allies, say the Quad nations, can squeeze China if there is a land border conflict between India and China. So for that reason also, South China Sea becomes a very important area of from India's perspective. So, and also the oil supplies to China majorly pass almost, I think, 80% of the oil supplies that goes to China from the Indian Ocean region and the South China Sea before it enters, Chinese territory. So these are some of the reasons why the South China Sea becomes a very important region for India from its own geopolitical perspective and its own defense perspective. So when that is so, how does it impact India? It impacts India in a way that if your allies in South China Sea are troubled by China, then it affects your own interests also because of the investments that you have made there. So, how is India responding to it? India has been majorly trying to build a defense relationship with several nations there. With the Philippines, we have supplied BrahMos missile to them. With Vietnam, there is a discussion going on. And recently, I read somewhere that even Malaysia is interested in getting BrahMos. So, Malaysia is also one of the littoral nations in South China Sea, and they too have concerns over Chinese territorial claims in the region. So there are multiple nations with whom we are doing defense deals. We are doing diplomatic relationship. We are doing economic ties, and so India is responding in a very positive manner through regular maritime visits by Indian warships to these nations, and also doing naval exercises with these nations. So they are building interoperability with all the nations in the region, and they are also trying to build military capabilities of nations in this region. So they are actually Vietnam essentially is also a nation with whom we are doing a lot of capability building in terms of their naval capability, so that they are able to stand up to the Chinese bullying in South China Sea and in the maritime space. So, um, skill building, basically capability building, military ties, military hardware supplies, then port calls, military exercises. These are multiple means by which we are getting involved in that more and more now.
So we'll wrap up this discussion with this answer of Bipindra ji. And thank you very much, Bipindra ji. You have explained the whole issue very lucidly, and I think it's a developing story, and we'll keep a track of it, and we'll keep on having Bipindra ji with us to comment on it further. And if you have liked the video, so the viewers, you can share it, you can like the video, you can subscribe to the channel also, and if you will press the bell icon, you'll get the notifications of new videos, and we'll soon be back with another issue, and we'll discuss it with the expert. And for the time being, it's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for watching us. Thank you, Bipindraji, once again for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure.